Nvidius Damon Welburn, better known by his stage name Future, is a rapper from Atlanta who over the last 7 years has released 6 studio albums and several mixtapes. Now in preparation for this video I listened to 3 of those, and those were Honest, DS2 and Hendrix. Now this video was voted for by my Patreon supporters, so if you want to vote on who you want to see in this series next, you can do so by donating as little as $2 to me on Patreon, and the link is www.patreon.com/CDTVProductions, and that link will also be in the description below. With all that being said guys, today we will be asking the question, is Future one of the worst rappers in the game? Let's find out.
Fuck out some commas, yeah. Fuck out some commas, yeah. Let's fuck out some commas. Let's fuck out some commas, yeah. 100,000 to 100,000. 100,000 on 100,000.
And as always, for part 1 we'll be looking at his voice and delivery. Now Future is mostly known as an auto-tune mumble rapper, and for the most part, that is what he is. However, I was fairly pleased to hear he tries to alternate his voice and delivery on at least a few tracks per album. Now I never thought I would say this about anyone, but when using auto-tune, Future actually sounds better when he mumbles with it instead of like trying to shout or sing with it. A good example of this is on the song Rotation. He just kinda quietly mumbles his way along on the track, but it works well, especially with the darker sound of the track.
Paranoid, pulling up garage, one in the head. I'm on hydrogen, nigga, full of balls in that red. I'm a camouflage.
However, a good example of where his autotune doesn't exactly work is the track Groupies. When he tries to do that almost shouting rap style, it doesn't work well with autotune at all, and sounds really off-key.
Like a Fuji. Turn your homie to fool, he a goofy. On my little one, get head from a groupie. I dug all in that pussy, I got him. Once a bird.
As I said in my last episode in this series, Future usually used autotune even when he really shouldn't, and that track is an example of this. But Future doesn't always use autotune, and the results when he does this are very mixed, to say the least. At his best, you end up with tracks like Move That Dope, where not only does he flow fairly well, but his voice actually sounds clear and focused. His voice is actually really bearable on that track and it works nicely. However, then on the flip side, with his voice and delivery at its worst with autotune, we get tracks that sound like shit. No, that's not me saying it sounds bad, I mean it does, but the track is literally named Shit.
Buy the whole 100 pair of red bottom shit. That's $250,000 on the head job, my nigga. Sticker. Fuck you and every nigga came with you.
I guess he figured without autotune he'd add some energy to this track. However, instead of adding power to his delivery, he just shouts the lyrics. And it literally sounds like his vocal cords are strained to the max. As for what I'm gonna give Future as a rating for his voice, it's probably just below average. His voice is pretty fucked up sometimes and it sounds like he's got something stuck in his throat, but when his autotune works, it works well and helps create a nice vibe, which happens on a lot of the tracks on DS2. I'll give him a 4 out of 10 for his voice. It's not complete and utter shit, but it could use some work. And for part 2, we're going to be looking at his flow. Now in terms of flow, Future never really had anything mind-blowing for me, and there are a few examples of bad flows he's used that I can think of. For example, there's the song Karate Chop. I don't want to, but I absolutely love this song. However, he uses the same flow for the entire song. Literally every line in the verses and the choruses use the same broken up, low syllable count flows.
Michael Jackson, Billie Jean. Got a Panamera, young nigga, hit Porsche. Got a young bitch.
I really like that song, but his flow is awful on there, and I really don't like those flows where rappers say 2 syllables, pause, and then 2 syllables, pause, and just repeat it over and over. That flow where it's like a budget, narcotics, pull up in it, new Rari. It gets really repetitive. He also, more than a few times, has some issues with staying on the beat, which is, as I've said before, one of the basics of being a rapper, so it's not great if you fuck that up. I also feel like his flow doesn't work as well on his slower, quote-unquote, emotional tracks. For example, on the song Solo, his flow doesn't really lend well to keeping up the energy on the song, and there's so many gaps in his vocals where Future is silent and it's just the beat playing, and it really just makes the track move along even slower than it should be. I think one problem with Future's flows is that he plays it safe way too often and isn't comfortable stepping outside the flows that he knows. However, there is one example of a song where I was genuinely impressed by his flow, and not because it was incredible, but it was still a good flow. This was on the song Sorry, and when he starts rapping on this track, track about 3 minutes in, he actually raps pretty clearly and it sounds pretty damn good.
When she got confiscated, no invitations, we showed up and made it. Long as my dogs and bitches betrayed me, pigeons contagious.
It's not the best flow I've ever heard, but at least it's focused and he's actually saying words. Also, like I mentioned before, he actually has a nice clear flow on Move That Dope as well. Also, it's not his own song, but Future pulls off a nice flow on Travis Scott's song 3500. So overall, Future only has a few examples that I can think of where he had a better flow, and even then he struggles to take risks with them. I'd say he has better flows than Kodak, but isn't as good as his clone Desiigner at having varied flows. So I'll give Future another 4 out of 10 here. And for part 3, we're going to be looking at his lyrics. Now, we all know Future has never been a hugely talented person at writing lyrics. It's hard for me to pick out any examples of when he's had amazing lyrics because, for the most part, they're very one-dimensional, and he sticks to the most basic wordplay such as jump out the whip like a slave master. It's so basic and been said so many times before in much better ways. I understand lyrics are not the focus of his music because he focuses more on how it sounds, and I don't expect him to lyrically impress me, but it is still an important aspect to look at. Let's start off with my favorite lyrics, the ones where rappers compliment themselves with the word retarded. On the song No Compadre, he says, "My jewelry hang on my wrist like I'm retarded. I came with the gang and they lightweight retarded." I can understand the part about his wrist, but what the fuck does lightweight retarded mean? It just sounds like he's dissing his friends. I understand the intention of these lines, but using retarded to compliment yourself is, well, retarded. He also doesn't really have much lyrical variety at all, so this could hurt quite a lot of his songs that are meant to sound a certain way or have a certain concept. For example, on the song I Won, the chorus actually sounds like a really nice sentiment, saying he feels like he won a trophy with this girl that he got. But then, as soon as the verse starts,
Get the fucking on the dresser just to make that pussy wetter.
it completely ruins any genuine sound the track could have because Future was too concerned with making sure he still sounded like a pimp. He kinda sorts this out a little bit on his most recent project, but lines like that still exist. Like the line on My Collection, where he essentially objectifies women by saying, "Even if I hit you once, you're part of my collection." I'd say lyrics is definitely the weakest part of Future's music. I'm gonna give him a 1 out of 10 here. I know that he doesn't focus on lyrics at all really, and he's more a party rapper, but even the topics he chooses to rap about don't change much. Definitely the weakest part of his music. And for part 4, we're gonna be looking at his beat selection. As for beats, let's not lie, this is 90% of what makes Future's music very listenable. Now, I'm not saying he adds nothing to the instrumentals, just that they play a big part in making his music easier to listen to, and they add the majority of the atmosphere to his music. But I don't want to take anything away from him, so I will say his beat selection is pretty damn good, with only a few that I wasn't a fan of. I can say right now, the best fucking beat I've ever heard him over is in the song Stick Talk. God damn, the beat on here is ridiculous.
Like to fuck this cash up on a new toy. Like to fuck this cash up on a new toy. You can't understand us cause you're too.
It's just a really intense beat, and I love that siren sound effect that Future has on a lot of his beats. I don't know why, but that tiny effect on its own helps make beats sound even better and more hype. And then there's another beat that I absolutely love equally as much, and that's the beat for Colossal. The piano on this fucking instrumental pulled the semen out of me. God damn, it sounds nice. I don't know why I have a hard-on for piano beats, but they're always my favourite. And that flute at the end of this instrumental, god damn, that was nice. I mean, throw a piano and a flute together, and it's probably the easiest way to make a melody, but I still like it. Honestly, his production is mostly pretty damn good across all his albums. However, there are some beats I don't really like as much. The one beat I really disliked was the beat on Incredible. It sounded like some weird pop beat, and it was not suited to Future at fucking all.
I was having trust issues, but I've been having way better luck since you. I know it's true love with you.
I also really dislike the beat for I Serve the Bass. It's cool that it has a gritty, dark sound, but it honestly just gets irritating. And the vocal sample, that kind of meh, that appears at some points on it, don't sound good at all. For the most part though, I really do like his beats, and he does experiment with his instrumentals a decent enough amount of times. I think I'll give him an 8 out of 10 here, because sometimes I feel like I don't even listen to Future for him at all. I feel like I just listen for the beats. Now that's not 100% 100% true, but there is a lot of truth to that statement. And for our fifth and final segment, we're going to be looking at my overall enjoyment of Future's music. So for this video, as always, I checked out 3 projects from Future. I know he has a shit ton, but I tried to pick a mix of projects that covered the span of at least 3 years to give me a good idea of his music. The 3 projects I chose were Honest, Dirty Sprite 2, and Hendrix. If I had to rank them in order of how much I liked each, DS2 was definitely my favourite, in the middle would be Honest, and my least favourite was definitely Hendrix. Let's start with my favourite one, DS2. I absolutely loved the overall darker drug dealer style Future went for on this album. It really didn't click with me until about track 5, but after that, I genuinely thought it was great until around track 14. And not that it got bad after track 14, it just slowed down quite a bit and it wasn't as interesting. No lie, this album has a really strong midsection and I was a big fan of it, which I really did not expect at all going into this. I mean, it's definitely not the best thing I've ever heard, but I could easily sit through the whole thing and get enjoyment out of it. This was also what I consider to be the Future album with the best production. Then my second favourite was Honest. This one was still decent enough, and I feel like he experimented the most with his beat selection on this one. For example, I wasn't expecting the beat to sound the way it did on Look Ahead or Ben's Friends. As expected, his subject matter didn't vary much, but this album was okay. Then my least favourite was definitely Hendrix. This album wasn't completely terrible, but it was for sure my least favourite. I got bored of it after about 10 or so tracks here because they were all pretty much Future style love songs. It's really good to see him at least trying to step out of his comfort zone, but it didn't work here. I did like a fair few of the hooks on here though. I know a lot of people make fun of this one because of Future's attempt at singing, but I loved the hook for Use Me. See, I'm just happy he put emotion into his delivery there, and even if you're an awful singer, if you at least try to put a lot of emotion into it, it'll sound decent. So overall, I kind of enjoyed Future's music, and I definitely liked it a lot more than I thought it would, which might surprise my viewers. I'll give him a 6.5 out of 10 here, mainly for DS2 alone, which I thought was a genuinely good album, but Hendrix pulls that grade down quite a bit, and Honest, as I said, was just okay. Even if I feel like Future doesn't add much to his music, and I mainly like it for the production, anything that makes it listenable is a good thing, so he's gonna get that 6.5 out of 10 rating. And now it's time for my overall verdict and ranking of Future in this series. So, as a total score here, Future gets a total of 23.5 out of 50. This definitely reflects my opinion on his music. I find if I add all the parts of it up, he's just about the definition of average, and he shows some flares of being a good rapper. But as I've said, his beats are the main attraction. As for where this puts him on my list, Future will take a spot right in the middle at number 5, just above his clone Desiigner and below Young Thug. I never thought I'd say this, but I can definitely see myself revisiting some of Future's music, but it's not great by a long shot. Now if you want to see the full list, you can check it out in the description or by clicking the link at the top of the description. Travis Scott is still holding on tightly to that top spot as the best rapper we've seen in the series so far, and Kodak is still all the way down there as the worst. Well, that's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed, and obviously subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you enjoyed it. I'd really appreciate that. Also, your like is really important to me because I already know there's a lot of Future fanboys that are going to hate this video. Even though I said he was average, I didn't say he was terrible. But that doesn't matter. Please follow me on Snapchat, Twitter, and Instagram. My username on all of them is CDTVProductions, and that's all in lowercase for the Snapchat. Also, let me know who you'd like to see in this series next. You can still request people you want to see. It's just that it will be voted for by my Patreon supporters, so they kind of have the final say in who gets done in this series. But with all that being said, guys, I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys all in the next episode. And this is CDTV Productions, signing out.